Okay, before we get into anything practical, before we talk about posting, confidence, content, or business, I want you to let this video sit with you, not take notes energy. Just sit with me for a minute. Because if you clicked on this video, showing up online doesn't feel exciting right now. It doesn't feel empowering. It doesn't feel like, yes, let me hit record and share my message. It feels heavy. And I want to say this slowly because I need you to actually hear it. That heaviness is not because you're lazy. It's not because you lack discipline. And it's not because you secretly don't want this bad enough. Most of the women I work with want this deeply. They want the income. They want the impact. They want to stop feeling invisible. They want to hear that their voice matters. But wanting something and having the capacity for it are two different things. And motherhood changes capacity. I think that's the part nobody tells us. Because according to the internet, motherhood is just a season you're supposed to push through, while also building a personal brand, healing your trauma, trying to stay fit, cooking meals, hearing from God clearly, and posting consistently before school pickup. No pressure. And then when we can't keep up, we tell ourselves this story that something must be wrong with us. Like, other women can do this. Why can't I? Meanwhile, you haven't finished a full thought without interruption since 2016. So if you're watching this while folding laundry, driving, cooking, hiding in the bathroom, or sitting in the car before going back inside, you're exactly who this conversation is for. Talk about the real reason showing up online feels hard. And it has nothing to do with confidence. Your body does not experience visibility as neutral. That's the part most advice skips. Posting online, especially when you're sharing your thoughts, your story, your faith, or your perspective, that registers as exposure. And exposure to a nervous system feels like risk. Risk of being judged, risk of being misunderstood, risk of being criticized, risk of being seen by people who knew the old version of you, risk of being visible when you were taught directly or indirectly that it wasn't safe to be. So when you sit down to post and suddenly feel tired, distracted, foggy, or unmotivated, that's not a character flaw. That's your nervous system saying, hey, this feels like a lot right now. I used to think I was inconsistent. I would open Instagram, stare at the screen, rewrite the caption about 10 to 20 times, and then close out the app. I would tell myself, if you really wanted this, you would just post and show up. But the truth, my body didn't feel safe yet. And nobody taught me how to build safety. They just told me to push harder, show up online, be consistent, grind. Now let's layer motherhood on top of that. Because as a mom, your nervous system is already doing a full-time job. You're needed constantly. Your attention is fragmented. Your body is rarely fully at rest. Your mind is carrying invisible lists. Even when you sit down to work, part of you is still listening for someone to call your name. So when visibility advice says, just be consistent, just show up every day, what your body hears is ignore your limits. And eventually, your system pushes back. That's when posting feels heavy. That's when you avoid going live. That's when you say, I'll do it tomorrow. Not because you don't care, but because you're already stretched far too thin. And no, drinking more water is not going to fix that. This is the reframe that changed everything for me. Avoidance is not laziness, it's protection. Your body is not sabotaging your calling. It's responding to overload. And once I stopped trying to bully myself into confidence, once I stopped saying, what's wrong with me? I could finally ask a better question. What would make this feel safer? That question alone softened everything. In the next part of this conversation, we're going to talk about why most confidence advice still doesn't work for moms, what confidence actually is and what it's not, and how to build visibility in a way your nervous system doesn't fight back. Not hustle, not pressure, not pretending to be louder than you are, but systems that respect motherhood, faith, and real life. So if this feels like someone finally put words to what you've been carrying, stay with me. I want to talk about why confidence advice still doesn't work, even when it sounds encouraging. Because a lot of it sounds right? Things like believe in yourself, be consistent. Confidence comes from action. None of these statements are technically wrong, they're just incomplete. They assume that action feels neutral in your body. They assume that your system isn't already overwhelmed. They assume you can access courage on demand. And for a lot of moms, that's just not true. Confidence advice usually skips straight to behavior without addressing safety. It's like telling someone to swim better while ignoring the fact that they're panicking in the water. That's why some of you can watch all the content in the world and still not post. Because your issue isn't knowledge, it's nervous system capacity. There were seasons where I knew exactly what to post, girl. I had the idea. I had the message. I even had the time. But every time I went to record, something in me would tighten. My voice would sound still. My thoughts would feel jumbled. I'd suddenly feel off. And I thought, maybe I'm not confident enough yet. But looking back, I didn't feel safe enough yet. Safe to be misunderstood. Safe to not be perfect. Safe to show up without over-explaining myself. Let's redefine confidence. Because I think it's been over-spiritualized, over-marketed, and misunderstood. Confidence is not loudness, certainty, charisma, or being unbothered. Confidence is evidence. That's it. Confidence is what happens when your body has enough proof that I can do this and survive. Every time you post and nothing catastrophic happens, that's evidence. Every time you share your thoughts and the world doesn't collapse, that's evidence. Every time you show up imperfectly and you're still okay, that's evidence. Confidence is built after the reps, not before. This is why wanting to feel confidence keep you stuck. You're waiting for a feeling that only comes after action. But action feels unsafe, so your body resists. That's the loop. And let's be honest, girl. Some of us are waiting to feel confident, like it's a magical morning. One day we'll wake up and be like, today I feel bold. Let me post 3 videos and go live. No kids yelling, no self-doubt, no intrusive thought, just confidence floating in the air. If that day comes, please DM me immediately. I want you to know what time zone you're in, sis. So if confidence isn't the goal, what is? Safety. The goal is to feel safe enough to show up, safe enough to speak, safe enough to repeat yourself, safe enough to be seen growing, safe enough not to explain every word, safe enough to let people misunderstand you and not spiral. When safety comes first, confidence follows naturally, not forced, not hyped, not faked, built. This is where faith really comes in for me because God doesn't shame growth. He doesn't rush formation. He doesn't demand fruit without roots. So when we treat ourselves with the same patience, things start to change. This is where I want to get practical, but not rushed. Because I don't want you walking away with pressure. I want you walking away with permission. The unmuted visibility system is not about doing more. It's about doing what your nervous system can handle consistently. There are 3 parts, and none of them require you to become louder, faster, or more confident overnight. Most moms are operating without permission. Permission to be a beginner again, not have it all figured out, post without a perfect outcome, grow in public, change their mind later. So before I ever think about content, I ask myself, what permission do I need today? Sometimes it's permission to be messy. Sometimes it's permission to be brief. And sometimes it's permission to just show up once. That question alone lowers resistance. I don't rely on motivation. I don't rely on energy. I definitely don't rely on discipline during a hard season. I rely on systems that survive in real life. For me, that's 3 anchors. What is she struggling with? The simple truth, one next step. That's it. No scripts, no overthinking, no performing, just a conversation. If I need a full script to record, I'm not creating content. I'm auditioning. You need small reps that teach your body this is okay. Post once, breathe, notice you're still safe. Repeat. That's how trust is built with yourself. In the final part of this conversation, we're going to talk about what it looks like in real mom life, how to stop over-explaining and second-guessing, how to stay visible without burning out, and how Unmuted and Seen fits into all of this. Not as pressure, as support. So stay with me. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is trying to build visibility that requires perfect conditions, quiet, energy, confidence, time, the right mood, the right lighting, the right mindset. If visibility only works when life is calm, it won't survive motherhood. We have to flip the question. Instead of asking, how do I show up perfectly? We ask, how do I show up consistently in imperfect conditions? That's the real skill. Because in my house, quiet is a luxury item. It's right up there with uninterrupted showers and hot coffee. So if your content plan requires silence, an hour block, and emotional clarity, it's already asking too much. I want to talk about the spiral because nobody names it. You post something. Then you start thinking, did that make sense? What if people misunderstand me? Should I explain more? Maybe I should delete it. That spiral is not a sign that you messed up. It's a sign that you care. But caring doesn't mean you need to correct yourself in real time. Here's the reframe. Once you post, your job is done. Your nervous system doesn't need to stay on watch. You don't need to manage how people receive you. You don't need to defend every sentence. You don't need to clarify everything immediately. Clarity comes from repetition, not from over-explaining. If your message is true, it can stand without you babysitting it. When I post and feel that urge to spiral, I do three things. I breathe. I close out the app. I remind myself I'm allowed to be seen without control. That's it. Not affirmation gymnastics, just grounding. A lot of moms confuse the two. Consistency is not forcing yourself to post when you're dysregulated, pushing through burnout, ignoring your body, shaming yourself into action. That's not consistency. That's self-abandonment. Real consistency is built on trust. Trust that you won't disappear on yourself. Trust that you won't punish yourself for being a human being. Trust that showing up doesn't require suffering. God isn't impressed by exhaustion. He's not measuring your worth by your output. So we don't need to prove ourselves by burning out. I want to say something very directly to the woman who disappears for weeks, months, maybe even longer. You didn't fail, sis. You didn't ruin your brand. You didn't lose your calling. You didn't mess it all up. You rested. You survived. You recalibrated. You don't need to be a dramatic comeback. You don't need to explain where you've been. You don't need to apologize for being human. You can simply return. Your audience is not sitting there with a clipboard. Visibility is not a streak. It's a relationship. I want to talk about unmuted and seen, but not in a salesy way. Because if it's not for you, it's not for you. And that's okay. Unmuted and seen is for the woman who knows, I can't do this alone anymore. Not because she's weak, but because she's tired of starting over. It's for the moms who want accountability without pressure, consistency without burning out, visibility without pretending, faith-centered encouragement, and systems that fit real life for moms. We don't push you to be louder. We help you feel safer showing up. I want to give you permission before we close. Permission to go slow. Repeat yourself. Post scared. Sound soft. Change your mind. Grow in public. Be seen before you're confident. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not missing something everyone else has. You're becoming visible at the pace of safety. And that pace still leads to income. It still leads to impact. It still leads to purpose. Thank you so much for sitting with me, sis. Not rushing, not skimming, not performing, just being here. If this video felt like someone finally said what you've been feeling, tell me in the comments. What part of visibility feels heaviest for you right now? I read them. I see you. You're not talking into the void. You're allowed to be seen. I love you, sis. I'll see you in the next video.